We're on location in Puerto Rico at the Somos Conference. This is where thousands of Democratic leaders and power brokers from New York City are gathered to discuss public policy, and everyone is talking about Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani. All eyes on the new team. How will the new administration keep all of those promises, especially free buses and universal child care? Our guests on this Sunday, Bronx State Assemblymember Karines Reyes. She's the chair of the Puerto Rican Hispanic Task Force, and she helped put together this year's conference. Also with us on this Sunday from Puerto Rico, Manhattan Borough President and City Comptroller-elect Mark Levine, how he plans to protect the city's finances in his new role. And later, Hispanic Federation President and CEO Frankie Miranda, what he says about ICE raids and the need for change. All that and so much more happening now on this special Somos edition of In Focus. Let's begin today's conversation with Bronx Assemblywoman Karines Reyes. It's so good to see you.
Pleasure to be here, Cheryl.
And it's so great to be in Puerto Rico.
I know, it's a pleasure to be here in the warm weather, away from the cold.
There are thousands of people here right now for Somos.
Absolutely. We had about 3,000 people register for the conference, and then of course there are people who show up who haven't registered. So we anticipate about a good 3,500 people are here.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And you're a big part of this organizational structure here. Let's start with the mayor's race. Zohran Mamdani is mayor-elect, and you will be working with him as a member of the assembly. You represent Castle Hill in the Bronx and many other big neighborhoods. What is your message to the mayor-elect?
I think that he campaigned on a message of affordability that resonated with so many of my constituents and so many New Yorkers. And we are in a conference that is Latino driven and talking about Latino issues. And I think a lot of his agenda was on Latino issues. People care about housing, people care about childcare, people care about affordability. So my message to him is that we are ready, willing and able to work with him to deliver for New Yorkers.
Yeah, and you are chair of the Puerto Rican Hispanic Task Force in the Assembly. And one of the issues on the front burner, of course, is protection of sanctuary cities and so forth. Tell us how this task force helps Hispanic and Latino communities.
Well, the Puerto Rican Hispanic Task Force for the Senate and the Assembly is a group of members of Latino origin that serve in the New York State Legislature and our goal is to address and focus on Latino issues in the legislature. Sanctuary cities is a key part of that because so many of our Latino community are immigrants. And our concern right now is to ensure that in New York City, with the new mayor, that we continue to hold the line on the sanctuary laws and that exists for the city. And on a state level, we're looking to expand some of those protections across the state because New York State is not a sanctuary state, but New York City is. We have other municipalities across the state that have sanctuary laws. But the reality is our concern is that we don't want our state agencies, our state employees to be deputized by the federal government to do immigration enforcement. That is not the job of the state. That is not the job of local law enforcement. The job of local law enforcement is to keep communities safe, not to do federal immigration enforcement. And that is where we draw the line. And what we want in our mayor is somebody who understands that and who is going to stand strong against the federal government, against President Trump, when they want to use our resources and our agencies for their purposes.
And I assume there are workshops on this very topic here at Somos, right? Because there are thousands of people, even though there are lots of parties, there's some serious business going on here,
Absolutely.
Right?
We have 68 workshops this year that talk about a breadth of topics. Immigration, of course, is one of those because it's front and center and it's a key issue that we're focusing on, not just in New York, but across the country. I think we've all are a little taken back by what's happening in terms of immigration enforcement. Many people are getting swept up in immigration raids, not just people who are undocumented and not people who have committed crimes. And that was our fear, that immigration enforcement was going to target people of color because of what they look like, because of the language that they speak, not because they are criminals or they're committing any crimes in our communities.
Yeah, and you know, your worst fears, like you said, now imagine civilians, people who are citizens are being swept up. A new legislative session will begin in Albany. How do you want Governor Hochul to address this?
I think we want Governor Hochul to, again, hold the line firm for New Yorkers against the attacks of Trump. I think there is a lot more that we can be doing in terms of immigration enforcement and protections for our immigrant communities. It's not just about throwing money at the problem. It's not just about having legal representation, though that was a key before that we fought for and we won, to be able to make sure our immigrant communities have access to legal representation. But the reality is that we need to ensure that they are not usurping our agencies, our state agencies, local law enforcement to do immigration enforcement. One of the things that we've seen is that we've seen more 287G agreements in the state of New York. Local police departments that are being deputized by the federal government and by ICE to do their work. And they're not just going after, again, people who commit crimes. They are bringing ICE agents for checkpoints, local safety checks, things that have nothing to do with immigration. We see that ICE is coming along with them, and people are getting swept up in those actions as well.
Sure, and let's quickly switch gears and touch on the proposed cap along the Bronx Expressway. It's right in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Give us an update on that. You know, this was once considered unthinkable, but now the proposals and the research is happening.
Yeah.
What more can you tell us?
Capping the Cross Bronx is a massive vision project and a legacy project for us in my district and in my community. We were able to get a feasibility study done with some dollars from the federal government, and the governor funded the second part of that study in her last state budget. So as we move along in this process, hopefully we can start to talk about when we can probably get some shovels in the ground. It's going to take a longer period of time, but the reality is that we live in Asthma Alley.
Yeah.
We have to do something about the air quality and the quality of life of the people who live around these highways. The Cross Bronx, we know, is a key pollutant in my community.
Yeah.
And capping the below grade parts of the Cross Bronx is a way for us to kind of mitigate some of those impacts.
Well, congratulations again on the 39th year of Somos. And there are so many people here, and I know it's going to be a productive event. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Cheryl.
Assemblymember Karines Reyes. Hey, thanks for staying with us. We're joined now by Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine and newly elected City Controller. Good to see you.
Thank you, Cheryl. I'm really happy to be here and so grateful for this opportunity to serve the city as the new comptroller.
Absolutely, and you're here in Somos in Puerto Rico. Everyone's all around you, congratulating you because you did something that hasn't happened in a long time. You won by an incredible number of votes. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it's really remarkable. 1.4 million people in counting supported our campaign. I'm just full of gratitude. I think our message got through.
Yeah.
We've talked about building more affordable housing, about fixing the broken mental health system, about holding Donald Trump accountable. We're going to do these things, and I'm so excited for this chance.
Let's talk about it point by point.
Yeah.
Affordable housing, that's at the top of your
Yes,
agenda
it
when
is.
you take over the controller's office. How does the controller deal with affordable housing?
Well, first, I just have to remind people of how bad it is. Rents are out of control, averaging more than $5,000 per month for a market rate apartment in Manhattan. And so this is just devastating for working class families and low income families. We've got to build more affordable housing. And it turns out the comptroller's office can help, and we will help, by investing some of our pension money. We're going to invest 1% of the pension funds in a way that's prudent, that'll get good returns for retirees. But that's $3 billion, and we think we can finance tens of thousands of units of new affordable housing all over New York City. It's going to be a major change. It's going to increase the pace of housing production for New York, and it's going to be my top priority as comptroller.
How do you plan to work with the incoming Mamdani administration?
Well, look, the job of the comptroller is to support the mayor because I want the city to succeed, but also to be ready to push back when appropriate. It's about independence, it's about accountability, and I'm going to strike that balance. I want New York to succeed because I love the city, but my job is going to be to call balls and strikes, and I'm ready to use the powers of the office. But I do want to acknowledge something, Cheryl, which is it's a really big deal that the city has elected its first Muslim citywide elected official. And I celebrate the fact that we as a city have achieved this milestone. And I also understand that it's a divided city, that this is basically a 50-50 city. And I'm thinking a lot about what we can do to heal those wounds, to bring people together. And I'm certainly ready to do that work.
And you'll also be the highest ranking Jewish official, something you're very proud of.
Yeah, it's very meaningful to me. I'll be the highest ranking elected official in New York City government, or I guess state government at that point. And I'm going to fight for the Jewish community in that role, and every community, to take on anti-Semitism and bigotry in all its forms. This is part of who I am. And I'm really proud in this moment to play that important role.
Did it surprise you, back to the election, did it surprise you that New Yorkers signed off on those affordable housing proposals on the flip side of the ballot?
I got to say, if you'd been with me over the last 12 years in my life in government, fighting for housing, you would understand that it's been a very, very difficult fight, that basically people want housing in other neighborhoods, they just don't want it in their own neighborhood. And so what the voters have done in changing these proposals, it's mind-blowing. I wouldn't have think it would have been possible 5 years ago. And it's a really a landmark moment. New York has chosen to put our citywide housing needs first. And it's going to really increase the pace of production. Your viewers know this because they're so well informed, but just been too complicated, too hard, too expensive, too time consuming to build housing in New York. And these proposals, all four of which passed by very big margins, are really going to bring about a new era for housing.
You will be the city's top fiscal watchdog.
Yeah.
Do you plan to follow in the footsteps of Brad Lander, who exposed a lot of corruption and overspending?
Yeah. I mean, the truth is there is waste still in New York City government. There's a lot of inefficiency. There's outdated systems that date from the 1990s or even the 1960s. And I'm sorry to say that even in 2025, corruption is a threat. We've seen cases in the last year that remind us. And the comptroller really, the office was created to fight corruption, and we're going to continue to do that with our audit power. But also, just to make New York City government work better, to be more efficient, to cut out waste, so that people know that they're getting good value for their tax dollars, and even more important, so New Yorkers get good services. So this is actually something I've spoken to Mayor-elect Mamdani about, and something that he wants to prioritize. So I'm hoping we have a partnership there, really to modernize the city, to make it more efficient, cut out the waste, and make sure that people can trust city government again.
Okay, well, congratulations again, Mr. Comptroller-elect, and we look forward to seeing you when you take on your new role in January.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Really a pleasure.
Pleasure is mine. Welcome back to In Focus, and we're joined now by Frankie Miranda, President and CEO of the Hispanic Federation. So glad to see you again.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So you have been busy at this Somos Conference talking about Latino representation and how it can go one way or the other during a critical vote, and we just saw that happen with the mayor's race in New York City. Tell us more.
Well, we have been talking for more than a year now about the things that Latino voters want to hear candidates to talk about. And in preparation to the presidential election last year, we released 2 polls, and they were clear indicators that Latinos wanted to talk about pocketbook issues: inflation, cost of living, affordable housing, jobs. And for the most part, there was no culturally competent, linguistically competent approach to those voters. There was then a signal that some Latinos moved from the Democratic column to the Republican column. And many people asked why. Why did that happen? And again, many Latinos were responding to the fact that they have not really fully recovered from the pandemic. They have not enjoyed some of the recovery that some sectors, including Wall Street and the stock market, have enjoyed. They're still struggling. And they voted for a candidate that said that he was going to make their life better on day one. Fast forward 11 months, and we have the elections in New York City. And what we saw was that some of those precincts that voted leaning to Trump in highly dense Hispanic precincts now voted for Zohran Mamdani. And that tells us that Latinos are paying attention when they are being messaged directly, spoken to, and that they feel that the candidate is really responding to their concerns and needs.
And what's also interesting, Frankie, as you know, during the primary, the Bronx, for example, went for Cuomo. And then during the general election, they went for Mamdani. So that illustrates your point that it's all about the messaging.
It's about the messaging and understanding that I like to call it that the Latino vote has to be approached like it is a swing state. You know that when there is a swing state, the candidates go and visit several times. They meet at local shops, they meet with local groups, local people, and they talk about the real issues in a very granular way. Latinos want to be spoken to. They want candidates that really say, I hear you, I see you, and has been demonstrated from last year to this year. And this race is going to change the tone, most likely for the midterm elections. Everybody was watching. And for us as a nonprofit organization, nonpartisan organization, what we want is to see how we can increase the level of participation of Latino voters in New York City and across the United States. And I think that many candidates and the parties are paying attention to these results, and they're paying attention to the Latino vote.
What does your research show, Frankie, about these ICE raids that are happening not only in New York City, but all across the country? How is the Latino and Hispanic community responding to that?
Well, first of all, we need to admit that all of these federal interventions, from ICE raids to the National Guard, have not had any positive outcomes in communities. Communities are afraid. We know of American citizens that have been detained without due process. And the whole approach of supposedly focusing on dangerous criminals have not been the case. The vast majority of people have been hardworking people, families that have been destroyed by these interventions. So if something we can learn from Portland, Los Angeles, Chicago, and even San Francisco is that it will need a multi-sector approach to make sure that the most vulnerable populations are not abused, are not victims of many of the literally kidnappings. In order for you to be deported from this country, an order needs to be signed by a judge, and people in less than 48 hours have disappeared. These are kidnappings. I mentioned San Francisco because we need to make sure that the business sector is heavily involved in the advocacy for these different cities. With a few phone calls from Silicon Valley, the order to go into San Francisco by the National Guard coming from the White House was canceled. What is going to be the involvement of the private sector, the business sector in New York City with the impending, the what already has been signaled is going to happen in New York City? That's what we need to be talking about, and how many sectors need to work together to make sure that it's not necessary, therefore it shouldn't happen.
And let's quickly, Frankie, touch on the federal funding cuts and how it's affecting the Hispanic community.
It has been devastating. The frontline workers of our community, the trusted messengers in community, are our nonprofit organizations. Hispanic Federation alone and our network have lost millions of dollars in programs that are workforce development, digital training, access to renewable energy, access to legal services. All of that has been incredibly disruptive to the lifeline of not only New York City, but the entire nation. So we are expecting that state government and municipal government is going to step up. We're asking the philanthropy world to step up. We know also that the private sector has retrenched because of the pressures of the different agencies that are putting pressure on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and pushing those away. So it has been a devastating effect on our nonprofit sector, and it's really sad to see that a lot of these political gains are made at the expense of the most vulnerable, but we're still standing. And there is a network that is really motivated and is going to continue pushing forward. We continue to sue the federal government and winning. We continue to make claims to the private sector to step up, and we will continue working with government, and in this case, the new administration in New York City, to make sure that our safety net continues to be stable for those that are most vulnerable.
And before we go, I want to quickly mention that you are being honored for making the Out 100 list this year. I know you're so proud of that.
Yes.
You're honored as a trailblazer in the LGBTQ community. I want to thank you for your time and congrats again. Frankie
Thank you.
Miranda, President and CEO of the Hispanic Federation.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching this special edition of In Focus on location at the Somos Conference in Puerto Rico. I'm Cheryl Wills. We appreciate you spending your Sunday with us.